Hi, welcome back. I'm really glad that you're here with us today because today we're going to talk about anxiety, and I believe this is going to be life changing for some of you who are like me. And even though you're smart, you're talented, you have success in some area, you rarely feel calm. I had anxiety for literally decades, and I was able to cure it. Not with medication, and I'm not telling you to stop taking any medication you're on or anything. I'm just saying that for me, I was able to follow the steps I'm about to show you and cure my anxiety, not have to take any medication, and still be able to be a very successful, productive person like I knew I could be and do the things that I have a passion for without feeling that anxious feeling in my body. So I'm going to teach you the same four strategies I used to get rid of my anxiety. I suggest that you don't just watch the video, but really get involved and take action. Get a notebook. There are going to be ideas that come to you while I'm talking, and I want you to be able to write those down and capture them because you're going to put those to use later. And I want you to be able to have a journal that you can use to document your progress day to day, week to week, month to month, because it is a process. But I feel like it's gonna take you a lot less time than it took me because I didn't have anyone to walk me through the steps. I didn't have anyone who had been there that could tell me what worked for them and maybe share with me some ideas that might help me. I literally did decades of research, of trial and error, of reading so many books and articles, watching. Back then, even when I started, it was TV and documentaries. We didn't so much have a lot of podcasts. We had radio shows, and now I'm still continuing in that. So make sure that if you really want to cure this anxiety, that you take an active role in doing the steps. Okay. So let's get started. Like I said, my anxiety had a very deep root. I don't remember ever feeling calm. And you couldn't tell by looking at me. By looking at me, I look like a confident young woman out there doing things. I graduated college at the top of my class. I was running businesses. My degree is in business, so I was running businesses. I was successful in a lot of areas. You wouldn't look at me and say, "This girl is a mess." Now, if you look deeper into my life, you could see the results of a lot of anxious attachments and trauma bonds that I had, but we'll talk about those in another video and how I was able to resolve those issues too. So let's talk about step one. And I kind of hinted around about it a little bit, but step one is where you identify the root cause of why you're feeling this anxiety. For me, it took a while, but I had to think about some of the things I remembered from my childhood. And to be clear, I'm not blaming my parents. One of the things that is very healing is when you stop being in that blaming mode and just start thinking about how you can heal you. Because it didn't start with me, but guess what? It didn't start with them either. In fact, my parents were teenage parents. So a lot of the time when I'm talking about my early childhood things, they were in their early 20s and they still had a whole lot to learn. So, but I remember this one time where I was in a swimming pool and I was talking to my mom about this. I talked to my dad about this too. And we were trying to figure out where I was and about how old I was. We moved around a lot when I was a kid, but I was in the swimming pool and I couldn't swim. And I remember it being a bright, sunny day, kids in the pool, parents sitting around, in lounge chairs talking on the edge of the pool or doing whatever they were doing. And I remember kind of being by myself. I was often by myself. And I'll talk about that in a minute. As part of just being a military family, I struggled with connecting and with friendships because we moved around a lot. But I remember being by myself in this pool and just kind of waiting around and suddenly taking a step and being in deeper water and not being able to stand on the bottom of the pool and hold my head above water. And in that moment, I just remember panicking. I didn't know how to swim. I didn't know what to do. I literally had no idea what to do. So I just start flailing, flailing and flailing all over the place, just trying to get my head above water, get to the edge somehow. And of course, in those situations, it seems like forever I'm flailing around. There are people in the pool, and I must have looked like a crazy person, but nobody seemed to notice. And I finally get to the edge of the pool, and I'm finally able to stand on the bottom and breathe. And I remember just being surprised that nobody noticed. Like, nobody noticed, nobody came to help. Nobody offered assistance. Nobody said anything. And in that moment, that panic that was in my body of one, if things come crashing down or go horribly wrong, nobody's coming. And two, not knowing what to do. Those were things I actually carried in my body for decades. And if you haven't already, pause the video, go and get your journal, go and get a notebook. Because I know some things are coming to mind for you that you need to remember that might be a part of your root cause. So pause the video, go and get a notebook and write those things down that are coming up for you. So the panic, the not knowing what to do, those are things that created thoughts and patterns that I carried in my mind and in my body for a very, very, very long time. And that not knowing what to do kind of leads me into another story. I want to just tell one more quick story. And this story was about moving around, and not so much a story, but a situation. My family was a military family. And so from a very young age, we moved every few years. So I grew up not having close friends that I grew up with. I didn't have close relatives either. And I literally had no mentors, no close adults who were leading me and guiding me in how to navigate being the new kid on repeat. New state, new schools, new classrooms, and trying to figure it out. And so, as you can imagine, you know how mean school kids can be. And a lot of times they already have their cliques, they already have their friend groups. So I'm coming in from a very young age, already with panic and anxiety in my body from earlier stories. And I do not know how to navigate this. So that panic, that anxiety of walking in, trying to figure out, where do I sit on the bus? Who do I sit with? Are they going to accept me? Where do I sit at lunch? Who can I talk to at recess? Those were anxieties that I carried with me continually, along with this feeling of not really ever belonging, always trying to fit in somewhere, always trying to find some kind of way and where I fit in. And so my childhood emotions mostly consisted of being anxious, not fitting in, and definitely feeling unsupported. And going into my young adulthood and even older adulthood, my emotions were still trying to find somewhere that I I fit in. Where do I belong? Definitely feeling unsupported, like I was literally in survival mode. So if you watched my video about struggling to enjoy life and you heard me talk about survival mode, I lived a lot of my life in survival mode because I felt like things can fall apart at any time and nobody is coming to save me or support me and there's no one I can fall back on. And so, but at the same time, like I said, you couldn't tell because I also had ambition. I had persistence. I got through college through a variety of day and night schools. I started businesses. I sought relationships, which ended up being trauma bonds, which again, we will talk about in another video. But I did have that ambition. And I knew that I could not continue living out these negative cycles on repeat because of the patterns that were in my body, because of the anxiousness, because of the trauma that I carried, because of all of the insecurity and just not living in my body, but living in panic mode. I once described my life as a decades long panic attack. But it was an unseen panic attack. And when I would talk to people about it, a lot of times they wouldn't even believe me because I looked put together. But I knew that I needed to clear out those negative patterns. And so I got to work. I started reading everything I could read on personal development, on healing trauma, on emotional wellness. I started trying to make these changes. I was writing, I was journaling, I was doing everything that I could do and using these different tactics and changing my perspectives, changing how I was thinking, trying to change those automatic thoughts that I had going through my mind on repeat of you're unsupported, you don't fit in, you don't belong, things are going to fall apart any minute and you don't know what to do. I had to change all of that. And guess what? I did. So here's what I did. I started reading so many books, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes. But first, I started changing my pattern of thinking. So automatic thoughts. When you think a negative thought and you start thinking it repeatedly, it becomes an automatic thought. Have you seen a picture of the brain and you see the little pathways that look like little wrinkles in the gray matter in your brain? Every time you think negative thoughts, you're creating new pathways that make those negative thoughts easier and easier and makes them come more and more often. And your thoughts lead to feelings in your body. So when I'm thinking those negative thoughts on repeat, and I think them so much that they become automatic, those feelings that those thoughts create, like anxiety and even depression, fear, those things become automatic in my body too. And I start living in negative thoughts and unhealthy feelings. So what I did was I challenged my thoughts. And if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down too. What thoughts do you need to challenge? Think about it while I'm telling you what my thoughts were. I needed to challenge my thoughts and find out what was true what was no longer true or just not true at all, and what was no longer relevant. So, for example, what was true was yes, I had an unsupported childhood mentally and emotionally. Yes, I had no mentors, no consistent adult that I could depend on to be there for me and to have my back. That was definitely true. But it was also true that as I started learning more healthy behaviors, I did have more and more people that I could talk to. I did have more mentors, even if they weren't in person mentors. They might have been people whose books I read or whose podcast I watched. I did have more and more good opportunities and resources showing up for me. So I needed to change my thought. So those old panic attacks, those old ways of thinking were no longer relevant. And I want you to take a moment to pause the video and write down some of your thinking that you need to challenge. What was true, but is no longer relevant that you're still holding on to that's causing you anxiety? So I changed my thinking, and some of the new statements that I started making were I am supported. Things do keep working out for me. Even when I fail, I bounce back. People, opportunities, and resources keep coming to me. And once I started saying those things, they started showing up more and more and more. And that is still true. Like right now, so many opportunities come to me that I don't even go looking for, that I don't even have to ask for. They just come to me. But I do maintain, I do continue to say all of those things. Things do keep working out for me as I keep moving forward. As I keep looking ahead, as I keep learning and growing, my life gets better and better. And I just continue to say those things. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect at it. It doesn't mean I don't sometimes have down days. I definitely do. But I always bounce back to that. Step 3, I want to talk about taking time to listen for guidance and inspiration. So I talked about identifying the root cause. We talked about changing your statements. When you take out the negative, you have to put positive back in. So there's 2 ways that I do that. The first way is to spend a lot of time. As I mentioned before, I read a lot of books. And I want to show you some of the books that I read, but I read so many books, hundreds of books, listened to hundreds of podcasts, documentaries, articles that I was reading, like anything I could get my hands on. I was taking it in because I really needed to change and I really wanted a better life. So here's some of the books. This is one of my favorites. It's called Power versus Force. And it talks about the energy that you have when you're in your negative emotions compared to the energy that you have when you become neutral and then more positive, and how good and wonderful things start coming to you when you do that. So, Power versus Force was one. This book, The Power of Intention, one of my favorites. Many of you may have read it or heard of it, but this book really helped me with staying focused on the good and specifically intending to have a good life. The language of letting go. When you're stuck in negativity, there are a lot of things that you need to let go of, especially if while you were in negativity, you created a lot of situations that were from trauma, trauma jobs, trauma relationships. trauma lifestyle, trauma habits. There were a lot of things that I had to let go of, and this book helped me a lot. And then here's one more. The Power of Your Subconscious Mind is one that really helped me think about how my brain works, how my thinking works, and how to go from unhealthy to healthy. Okay, so those helped me a lot. So part of the listening, when I say taking time to listen, as I'm reading those books, when ideas come to me, I would write them down. Because sometimes things, it would be something in the book, but sometimes it would be something that was inspired by what I was reading that specifically to help me. And so that was part of my listening time. And then my other listening strategy is getting quiet and listening for divine guidance. And when I say divine guidance, I mean guidance that comes from the goodness and the good plan that God has for you. An idea that drops into your mind and your spirit, a step that you need to take, someone you need to talk to. Those things have happened to me more times than I can possibly count. And I love receiving that type of divine guidance because it gives me that support that I felt I didn't have growing up, and that guidance from mentors that I felt I didn't have, and has led to some amazing and wonderful outcomes. And so that leads into step 4. When you get that guidance, when you get those directions, take inspired action. So when you're in survival mode and when you're anxiety, just like I was in the swimming pool, a lot of times you're just flailing around trying to do anything that you can do and get anything that you can get to keep yourself afloat in this life. Inspired action is when you get quiet, you've poured the good into you mentally, spiritually, emotionally, you're quiet, you're listening for something to just speak to your spirit from the book that you're reading, from just the pure voice of God. And then you take that action and it turns out amazing. And that has happened to me so many times that I make sure that I'm taking that time and I'm taking that listening time. Okay. So that was step 4, but I want to give you some bonus material because you cannot be healthy mentally and emotionally in an unhealthy body. You just can't. And even if you can grasp at a little bit of mental and emotional health and wellness, it's going to be a struggle. You have to take care of your body. I spend time walking outside, getting fresh air, doing some type of exercise, and I'm not a fanatic about it by any means. And I have a variety of exercises I do, but some type of exercise and movement. I drink a lot of water, drink a lot of herbal teas. I make sure I'm getting fruits and vegetables, not just filling up my stomach to be full, but actually getting nutrients, antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, all of those things that make your mind and body work better. So, in all of those steps, you want to make sure you're eating healthy, you're getting exercise, you're getting some rest, and you also want to make sure that you're protecting your environment and you're around some positive and supportive people. All right, so I hope you wrote down some wonderful ideas. Let me know in the comments, which of those steps resonates with you the most, and what's your next step? All right. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.